Yeah, that doesn't seem fair. I like to have a yacht, but I don't like to pay interest. That's fair,
Yeah,
right?
I
Yeah.
totally get it. It's the same over here, but it's just how financial institutions unfortunately work.
So if you got hurt on vacation and let's say your tip of your finger was cut off, they wouldn't cover you for that specific injury. It would have to
Hmm.
be a specific length of your finger for them to
Hmm.
cover you. Like they had the inches in the fine print
Hmm.
to so they
Oh wow.
really will fight you tooth and nail, and you've been paying for this insurance month per month, right?
Like literally, they'll fight you for the nail.
Yes,
What?
Yeah.
exactly.
So the OBSI e-transfer fraud cases in 2021, there were 27 e-transfer fraud cases open, representing 5% of the total banking cases. In 2022, there were 87 e-transfer cases opened, representing 13% of total bank cases. And in 2023, there were 594 e-transfer fraud cases open. That's a jump from 87 to 594, representing a quarter of the total banking cases.
Welcome to the Cambrian Explosion episode, everyone. This time we're covering fraud, and Yawar just talked about some of these statistics. As an immigrant coming in here to Canada, it's always challenging understanding the financial landscape and not getting taken in. And this is just one example of fraud that happens over here that you need to be aware of. And we're going to dive a little deeper into these kind of events. We have had our own experiences living over here, and we thought it would be interesting to share some of those experiences. Um,
And what we
e-
learned from them, right? Like how
yeah,
does the
what we learned from
systems
them.
work in Canada?
Absolutely. Mavish, in fact, you worked with the credit industry for a while, didn't you? And you have some pretty interesting experiences out of just that part of working with credit card people and what banks do.
Yeah, so I worked at RBC and RBC Dominion Securities and CIBC. CIBC, I specifically worked in the credit card department. So you would have people, immigrants, calling in with debt of 10,000, 20,000, up to $40,000. And a lot of that was just interest. It wasn't the purchases that they made. I would hate to understand what you would purchase for $40,000 and get it that high, but it was interest, and people would just pay, $10, and they call me
I
and ask what's the minimum payment.
I really needed that yacht, Mavish. It was a lifestyle choice.
Yeah, and then you'd call me and complain about why I was
Yeah,
getting charged the interest and all that.
yeah, that doesn't seem fair. I like to have a yacht, but I don't like to pay interest. That's fair,
Yeah,
right?
I
Yeah.
totally get it. It's the same over here, but it's just how financial institutions unfortunately work. The thing is, sometimes they actually, and I think we're gonna tag team on this first. Mavish, I want your thoughts on financial institutions themselves, how they can set you up sometimes with their terms and conditions for being in that kind of a situation. And then I would like to get a bit of like deep dive from you, Yawar, in terms of the interact piece, how it actually technically works and how the fraud can happen. Why is this increase happening that you shared at the beginning?
Yeah, so the thing is, the financial institution's goal is to get as much money from you as possible, right? When we were there, I was in the customer service department, and but
Yeah.
they right off the first bat in our training, it's like make sure you're selling them everything that comes on your screen, every little thing. And we had this one colleague who was later let go, but he would sell, to 90-year-old women $120 credit card just so that he could meet his sales targets and sell her, oh, you can get enough points to take a trip here. And it's just like, you're 90 years old. You don't need those points. You need to rest at
Yeah.
home.
Oh, you can
Uh,
give the points to your grandkids. Wouldn't that be so nice if they had those points? They could travel.
It's actually very hard to transfer it. I,
Yeah.
I I believe, I don't know, changed now, but if you have points in your credit card and you're no longer here, they're not going to give that up to the
Okay. Okay.
So
Okay.
I'm literally hearing people are incentivized to sell things to in the in that industry, is what I heard from you, right?
Yeah, that's exactly it. They're not there to help you manage your money. They're there to make sure they can get the most out of your money and get you deeper and deeper into debt and purchasing more things. And that's why people apply for 3 or 4 credit cards and max those out. And I was mentioning to you too earlier, you have these options of balance transfer. So what people do is they'll take all of their amount, that's how they get the $40,000 from one bank to another bank at 0% balance rate to another credit card that has, some money on it. And then the bank takes advantage of them because at the end of the day, if you have purchases on a credit card, and even though you have a 0% rate on it, the purchases will still have interest, right? So people don't really think about all those finer details. And my job at the time was just to read disclosures. It wasn't actively to educate you on how you could maximize these deals to make your life better, right? So it was honestly there to take advantage of the people. And, obviously no one's going to really admit this, but in my head, when I would go home, I would think, immigrants would be the ones that would be most impacted by this because they just don't understand, right? And you would have to sit down with them and explain it to them in a language that they would understand in a foreign country. And that is not time that the bank wants to spend doing, because if they understand it, they're not going to, if I could tell them, I would say, don't get this balance transfer, don't spend money on a credit card, get maybe a loan from a bank that's lower interest rate, right? Build
Get a
your
line of
equity.
credit.
Yeah, get a line of credit. That might be lower interest, but you need to ask them where your options are and have smart questions for them because you don't want to end up in debt. And yes, you can file for bankruptcy, but then you're going to be stuck not being able to get a mortgage for 7 years. So I don't know if that's changed now, but it was 7 years before. So, and they were taking advantage of everyone, including people who had cancer, who, had multiple medical problems. And they were literally paying for their medical bills on those credit cards and not understanding that because they couldn't think of that at that time,
And
right?
and if I can add a comment on there, it's not the fault of the employees. The thing is, you show up as an employee, you are given an incentive or a task to do something, and you're incentivized to do it. Somebody set that policy. You have been given a job description, and you don't know when you talk to somebody on a call where that person has been, who else they've talked to, where else they're coming from. So it's not the fault of the employees. Often though, they are the ones who bear the brunt of actually having to deal with somebody who's angry, upset, disappointed, emotionally charged in a negative way, and they have to take that home every day. And I just want to add that as well. Don't take it out on the employees. It's the policies of the banks that are doing this.
Oh
It's
yeah,
the policies of the people who will earn $1 million+ bonuses at the end of the year.
yeah, and
And
they
they
don't
and
really,
they force the lowest paid employees of the company to deal
Yeah.
with the backlash of the policy.
yeah. And to be honest, they don't really think about or care about even the working conditions of some of these employees. I remember there was a policy there where no matter whether you were pregnant or not, you only had 2 washroom breaks a day, which,
Wow.
yeah. So I was just so shocked by that because they were, pregnant women working there. I'm just like,
Yeah.
how, and they were monitoring, how many times you'd get up from your desk. So that's why it
Mm.
was like 2, because if you got up more than twice, then you were
Yeah.
using up more of your break, right?
Mm.
So there were just so many things. But on a side note, we started this conversation with e-transfers. And
Yeah.
e-transfer is another thing because what this conversation is about is understanding financial institutions. And e-transfers is not something that is a little unique to, I would say, Canada, right? So that's
Mm.
definitely something that I want to talk about because
Yeah.
essentially that's what it is. You're coming into a country where there are these new ways to use your money. And if you don't understand them, you're very open to scams and to ways that your money will be exploited, even though you're putting it in
Mm.
in a financial institution.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
not that there aren't payment systems elsewhere in the world, of course there are, but e-transfer is slightly different as we will dive into in just a bit.
Yeah, I was gonna say first, I would definitely mention our previous episode. We did talk about financial systems in different parts of the world. There's an older episode that you guys should check out. Yeah,
Yeah.
you were gonna share a little bit about the actual mechanisms of how e-transfer works, and then how are
Right.
people are able to do a fraud and why the banks or how the banks deal with it. So three, four things that you had touched on previously. I'd love to get your input and your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so CBC article, we will link to that in the show notes. The title is TD Bank customer lost $480 after e-transfer canceled despite having auto deposit. And they mentioned there that a Go Public test, a Go Public is a CBC News investigative service, has since found that some e-transfers can be canceled even when the recipient has auto deposit, depending on what financial institution the money is sent from. So apparently the way it works is that when you send and receive an e-transfer, two banks are talking to each other, right? Your sender bank and recipient bank. So the sender bank sends the message saying that I'm going to send you, let's say, $480 right now. And the recipient bank says that, okay, cool, I'm going to get $480. And it shows you this new pending transaction to the user with the auto deposit saying that, oh, you've got auto deposit on. So I'm going to show you you've got a pending transaction incoming, $480. Now, you as the user, you see this, you might thinking, okay, cool, the money is going to be in. So, I have the money, so I can complete the transaction and, hand over whatever I was selling. And fine, I'm just going to do that. But on the sender side, the sending bank can actually have in place their own security checking mechanisms where they do various fraud or whatever checks, which is ironic. And meanwhile, they can have a window of about even half an hour to finalize these checks and finalize the transfer. And in this window of time, the sender can have the ability to cancel the e-transfer. So the sender can take whatever they came for, they can drive away, and 15 minutes later, they can cancel the e-transfer send, and you are left with $0 because you thought that you were getting $480, but you actually got zero. It's very tricky because you don't realize that the banks work like this. They have this coordination issue that they have to deal with, and it's never made explicit to you, the user, that this money might actually not be end up being deposited into your account, even though it shows up as pending.
So in essence, if you're buying something from a marketplace, from a Kijiji, and somebody is coming over and transferring money to you, you need to be a little more wary and keep an eye out, because if they cancel,
Yeah,
your money is gone.
even
Like
if you
you
have
might,
auto deposit enabled, you cannot assume that you have the money until it went from pending status to confirmed status or posted status in your account statement. So
okay,
that can take more than half hour.
okay. And
Yeah.
I know that that's something, Mavish, you had somewhat of a similar kind of personal experience, although the person didn't. Why don't you share the story?
Yeah, so we were selling something from our house on Facebook Marketplace, and the person did the same thing. Like they said they were coming, they were interested. They even sent us an e-transfer for the money, and it wasn't a large amount. I think it was like $15. And then while I was waiting for them to come, they just canceled it. So it's not the same. Like I didn't lose any money or got the money and then it disappeared from my account or anything like that. But it's just sort of one of those things where scammers just, want to waste your time and try to get you to do something. Like, when we were about to start this conversation, for example, I got a text about, oh, we saw your background, your resume. We'd love to offer you a job. It's 45, $20 an hour. Are you interested? So I think all these scammers are always just trying to get your attention and get you to click things and pay attention to things, whether it's on Facebook Marketplace or
Yeah.
email or something. And then once they've hooked you in, you're kind of
So,
stuck.
I can talk about this from a marketing perspective. It's a model that's used in what's called the freemium model when you look at software, and it's about microtransaction. It's about getting one step at a time to move you in the direction of getting transactions done. And this is also a sales tactic, by the way. It's when salespeople try to sell you thing, it's don't try to sell the whole package in one go. Break it down into smaller pieces and get smaller micro yeses. And what's happening is that mentally you are It's kind of like you're zigzagging through it. So your decisions are smaller decisions, and it's easier to commit to small involvement rather than large involvement. But when you look back, you've built an emotional involvement that is much bigger. And
You've
so
convinced yourself that you really
that
wanted that thing.
that's exactly it. You've either convinced yourself, or even if you haven't convinced yourself, you have spent time and you have spent emotions on it. You have made the emotional effort, and now you're engaged. And so it's hard to disengage, particularly when you feel you're going to have a loss of that time and effort. So it's opportunity cost. It's a tactic that's used in marketing all the time, like the freemium model is an example of that being used, and microtransactions to move people in particular decision making that that is there. And scammers are, they understand psychology. That's what they're doing. Like marketing is a more, let's say, an educated, it's a more measured, and it's a more regulated version of sales. Scamming is the least educated, least well, not, I wouldn't say educated, least nice, least
Right. Benign,
well, malicious. Actually, scamming is the
malicious.
most malicious version of using those
Yeah.
psychological tactics.
Yeah, yeah, and I want to touch, really, kind of like relate that to something that Mahesh mentioned just earlier, is that they're focused on getting you to click on things, and that is especially important with e-transfer because e-transfer was designed for an era where phishing attacks were not that well known, but now phishing attacks are much more well known and widespread. And what e-transfer unfortunately does is, if you don't have auto deposit set up, for example, when somebody sends you money, you actually have to click on a link in an email that eTransfer Interac sends you, that click on this link to deposit your money. And they take you to your bank's login page, and you have to log in with your credentials there, and then they allow you to deposit the e-transfer. Now, here's the problem. Now, an attacker can send you a legitimate looking email sending you that, telling you that such and such person, your contact, maybe your aunt or uncle or whoever, has sent you $1,000. Click now to deposit the money. Note that this transfer will expire in 24 hours. So make sure you act quickly. So they build the psychological tension. This is a well-known phishing and scamming tactic. So you click on that legitimate-looking e-transfer email, and they send you to a scammer's page, which looks like your bank login page. And you type in your bank credentials there. And meanwhile, the scammer takes your credentials and logs into your real account. And then they transfer the money out of your real account while they're showing you a loading spinner on your fake scam website. So you are waiting for the page to load. You're seeing a spinner spinning. And meanwhile, the scammer is taking the money out of your real account. So this actually happened. This is not theoretical. This happened to an elderly Chinese lady, an immigrant lady in Toronto, and her English is not that great. So her son spoke for her and said that banks need to take better security measures to protect against these kinds of things, but they are not incentivized because they don't suffer any losses when customers
Yeah, and
money
they
like
blame
that.
the customers, right? Like, oh, you gave the
Exactly.
information to this person. And it's actually very
Yeah.
hard to contact a fraud department and get things to go your way. And if you're not careful, they will blame you, and then it's not part of their insurance. The fine print that is there.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot hidden in the fine print.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. They are very quick to disclaim responsibility. They are very quick to try to put a gag order on the customers so that the customers are not allowed to speak to the media about it or to, have third parties. They try to cover up these cases because, they don't want to suffer reputational damage. It's only when investigative journalists or other people like that contact them, then they privately talk to the affected victim customers and then try to reimburse them if they feel that their reputation would come under threat. That's when they
Yeah.
take action.
Yeah, and most people don't want to go through that hassle. Like, I don't remember which insurance this was, but I think it was vacation. So if you got hurt on vacation, and let's say your tip of your finger was cut off, they wouldn't cover you for that specific injury. It would have to be a specific length of your finger for them to cover you. Like they had the inches in the fine print to so they
Oh, wow.
really will fight you tooth and nail, and you've been paying for this insurance month per month, right?
Like literally, they'll fight you for the nail.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah.
I do, however, want to mention a couple of things. We have been bashing the institutions, but here's a couple of things that I do want to mention. Most institutions will tell you when you sign up, and this is for people to be careful and read about this. For example, Service Canada will tell you, we do not contact you. Read their communication policies, because they do have communication policies. Those policies are put in place for their own protection, for their own liability protection. But here's the thing, if you don't read them, then they're still going to use the law for themselves. They're going to say, we had these policies, we did have this written out somewhere, you should have read it. That's your fault. So that's one thing that I'm going to say that you should do. The other thing that I'm going to say is that
education is so important for yourself.
Education is so important. Keeping in line with that, there's also help already put in place by the Canadian government. We're going to link in the show notes again the anti-fraud. How do you contact, what you should be doing, etc. There's a step-by-step
How to report fraud. Yeah.
Yeah. So definitely go check that out so that you're aware of those rules as well. And if something does happen, then it's not panic, it's reach out to the right people, and so those notes are going to be available. And
And
finally,
preventative, sorry, go ahead.
yeah, go ahead, please add to that.
So I was going to say before, in line with that, similar recommendation from me personally would be to set up a preventative step so that log into your online accounts right now and set up text message notifications so that whenever a transaction happens on your accounts, you will get a text message, like on your checking account when there's a transaction, on your credit card accounts when there's a transaction.
Two-factor authentication, you mean?
No, whenever somebody charges your credit card any money, like
Oh,
let's say
yes,
you went
I have that
to,
set up.
yeah, exactly. Or whenever a deposit comes into your checking account, or whenever a transfer leaves out your checking account, you will get a text message saying that this amount was charged, this transaction. So you will never, want to see any unexpected things in those notifications, but you just want to be prepared to immediately know about it and contact your bank in case anything happens, because there are people out there who are trying to get hold of your financial details and bank account details and credit card details, and they will definitely try to charge whatever money they can out because many people just won't notice.
Yeah, and
of course, if you don't want to get flooded with too many notifications, if you think that you don't care about many of these notifications, like let's say you tap your credit card to ride on TTC, and you don't want to get notified about the fare every time, then you can say that, okay, make it a limit of less than $5. I don't want notifications, but if it's more than $5 threshold, then I do want the text message.
Yeah. And I just want to say, I think we talked about this episode about our, in a nutshell, I think we were discussing our financial institutions sort of taking advantage of immigrants. And for me, that the answer for that is, I think no. I think, although everything we said and we've been bashing them, but the thing is, that's just how they're set up here. So you have to really educate yourself and understand what you're getting into. Because because what I ended up doing was, I used to call banks all the time to figure out what to do. And every time I would call, I would get a different answer. So what I did was I educated myself. And then at the end of the day, my money was managed better because I just understood how they work. And
yeah, they're designed to take advantage of everybody, not just immigrants. So immigrants often face more challenges because they're more not familiar with these systems. But yeah, it is exploitative, but there are tools that you can use to protect yourself.
Yeah, so maybe they do take an advantage to a degree. I would love to hear what, Nabil, your thing would be. But for me, it's like if you educate yourself and you're patient and you understand what credit cards are and the interest rates and what e-transfers are and how to use them, and you don't click on any links that people send on email or stuff like that. Because most of the time it's the links that you don't think of that are the ones that actually get you. You know,
I
it could.
constantly get messages, text messages saying Canada Post could not deliver your parcel. Please click here to
Oh,
reschedule.
I got that
Yeah.
yesterday too.
Yeah.
This is the
That's-
last attempt to reach you. Your
Yeah.
parcel will be lost. Please click this or
Yeah.
you lose your.
Yeah.
I'm just like, what package?
Yeah, exactly.
I will say that why don't our listeners also share their experiences of what's happened to them in the comments? I think sharing these stories with each other on how what we've experienced, how we dealt with it, and how it made us feel, all of these things, sharing them so that we get more knowledgeable is actually very important. So please do share them in the comments down below, and
We
for
learn
the,
from each other.
yeah, we learn from each other.
Yeah.
I think that's also going to be a wrap for the episode. Thank you very much for listening in. This was our little deep dive into how you can be tackling moving here. When you move here, what you should be aware of in terms of fraud and in terms of keeping your money safe.
Yeah. And until next time, I hope you, have great listens. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And as Nabil said, leave us a very insightful, fun, sassy comment, and we'll get back to you. And yeah, we have a great day.
Take care.
Cheers.